Cool. Looks like we're all good to go. Welcome everybody to the weekly SIG Docs meeting. Today is February 9th, 2021. It's 10:30 Pacific. I'm Jim Angel, one of your co-chairs for SIG Docs. And before we get started, are there any new contributors joining us today? See a lot of returning friendly faces, so it's good to see y'all again. And if anyone is new and wants to chime in or chat, feel free to do so, and we can definitely have some time later to talk further about new folks who are joining. This week's for updates and reminders are this week's PR Wrangler is Irvi, and next week PR Wrangler is myself. So I'm aware that I will be upcoming Wrangler, and I will assume those duties. A quick funny side stories. I thought that I was Wrangler this week. For some reason, it must have just came up when I was updating this agenda last week. And I was like, shoot, I didn't do my Wrangler duties. And I jumped in the dock today and I saw his ERV. I was like, all right, next week I'm going to be on it starting Sunday. So you have my word for it here. And as a little bit of a relief when I saw that. And as always, PR Wranglers, make sure you know your shifts. There is a link in the agenda, which I will paste into the chat here. And moving on to the release 121 updates. Divya, are you here?
I'm here though.
Awesome. Ray, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so our status is green on the dock side. The integration branch is healthy. Last week's branch sync to merge the master branch with the dev 1.21 was that PR was merged. Today is enhancements freeze today. So they're currently, I think there's 69 enhancements being tracked. I've already assigned the enhancements to the docs team members, and in the next few weeks, we're coordinating with the enhancements team on comms with the enhancements owners. Also, we have one doc PR already merged. So a review is from Tim. Thank you, Tim. Two tech reviews already given. I saw Chimeng also gave a review on it. So we have one down, many to go. So enhancements freeze is the end of today. So we are likely to get a few more in. And that's it for me.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Ray. Sounds like things are rolling along. For folks that are interested, Divya did leave a few action items here. I wouldn't be doing it justice to represent it. I would just be reading it just like much of y'all can in the agenda. Looks like there's
Jim,
some.
I'm here.
Oh, awesome. Divya, do you want to mention the pieces you put in the agenda?
Yeah, so there are a couple of updates from mine, and thanks to Savita and Tim, firstly, for discussing the PSP deprecation block on the SIG security docs call. After you'll have had a conversation with Matt, I guess. I'm not really sure of the link, but I guess y'all are already in talks for a follow-up blog to the existing one that's there as a PR in the docs, in the agenda doc. The second set of updates that I have are around feature blog and release blog delivery and review process. So after a lot of back and forth over a chain in SIG release, we sort of narrowed down the feature blog as well as the release blog delivery and review dates. Those are listed on the docs. So Anna actually sent out the very first comms around it. I mean, it's not really comms, but it's more a sort of, hey, this is the first sort of deadline that y'all have. So um, March 1st is the first date. So starting this process, starting the cycle, we are going to have an opt-in feature opt-in process for the feature blog, which means that we don't go around asking people, hey, do you all want a blog for your particular feature? Instead, we actually give them access to a particular sheet, which I'm yet to create, I'm aware. Uh, but we give them access to a particular sheet and have them list down whether or not they want a feature blog for that particular for that particular enhancement. Now, this needs to be done by March 1st. That's the first deadline. Then March 25th is the date when the release comms lead, that's me, and my team will be submitting our release blog for review from you folks. So that's the second one. Then March 31st, which is well after the docs are merged, I guess. Docs PRs are merged. We will be that's the deadline for the the comms blogs that we that have opted in. I mean, the six that have opted in for comms blogs to actually deliver the blogs via PR. And then we will have a Monday, Wednesday, Friday cadence after the release to actually publish it. So this was a process, but it's not really PR'd into the current release cycle markdown, which is there on Git. We'll be doing that over the next couple of days, and there will be more details coming out in the form of an email from Nabarun in the later half of this week or maybe next week early. So yeah, that's a lot of content from me. So sorry for going on for that long.
Awesome. No, that's all really great stuff. As far as what SIG Docs can do to help, is there anything that's waiting on SIG Docs or anything that we're blocking right now?
So as far as I know, there's nothing pending. But I'm not sure if Savita's there on the call or Tim is there on the call. But if they are able to shed some light on what discussions were there about the in the SIG security docs meeting, that would be great, because I wasn't there for one, and I regarding the feature blog delivery that follows this one, not feature blog, the blog delivery following this one, this PR that is there on the agenda. I'm not aware of what's the thing, so I would not be able to do complete justice to what they have discussed. So if any one of them is there, I'd rather that they take this stage and explain it better.
I can provide it. Just hi everyone. It's been a while. I'm so happy to see you all. So we discussed in the meeting about adding a SIG security byline, which everyone is in agreement with. And there was also a conversation of having a follow-up blog to talk about user perspective on other alternative solutions and stuff. And they have been some volunteers. And we just captured them. We haven't followed back. I'm not sure, Tim, did we follow up with them? So there were volunteers who signed up to provide their perspective into a blog, and Tim was kind enough to say that he'll help out the blog. So that's where it stands for now. But if there is any progress,
I have heard nothing.
Okay. All right, so that's where it stands now. So I will poke, or I will just in the next call, maybe I'll just bring it up and ask for status, and I'll get back to SIG Docs the coming week after that meeting, whenever that is.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds good. And I guess everyone knows where to find us if we could help with anything, definitely. Cool. Anything else related to the release or some of the upcoming communication changes or dates? All right. Not hearing a ton. I'm going to actually take a step back. I saw in chat there we do have a new contributor, Mike. Might be screwing up the last name here, Togeran. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong there. Actually, Mike, I've seen you before here. You're not new.
Yeah, I'm not new, but I'm not a contributor yet.
Gotcha. Well, we're happy to have you. Happy to help out. Like we tell everybody, is if we can answer any questions, you know where to find the SIG Docs channel on Slack. Feel free. I always mention to folks that it's a relatively friendly community, and here to make you successful and help you out, because we want more contributors.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. And anyone else who has joined since we got kicked off here, that's a new contributor that cares to introduce themselves?
Oh, hi, I'm Gelton from Brazil, and I try to help in the Portuguese translation.
Awesome. Thanks. Nice to meet you, Jilton. There is also a SIG docs localization meeting that happens once a month that is going to be relative to all of the localization efforts and trying to come under one roof that is led by Brad Topel, who's also on the call here. I don't know, Brad, do you want to mention a little bit about that meeting and a little bit more about it, I guess?
Oh, absolutely. And welcome, Mike and Gelton. We meet once a month, the different localization teams to share tips and tricks. There's a couple different approaches for how to handle, the translation and, staying in sync with the English version. And so helpful tips and tricks. And, hopefully I'll put in a link to where you can find more information on that meeting. But we just meet once a month. We have our own Slack channel, and great way to learn more about the translation localization process.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad.
Sure.
All right, moving on to the blog update. Is there anyone here who wants to give an update on the status of the blog? Not hearing a ton of volunteers. I will assume that the blog is rolling along. And moving on to issues and PRs, which is also a blank category. So I don't know, does anyone have any issues or PRs that they'd want to raise awareness or attention to that you'd like to discuss here? All right, once again, not a ton going on. We're flying through the agenda here. This is moving along quickly. On the discussion area, Abby, continue from last week, tracking stale content in the repo. This came up. We had a great discussion. It went up until the time, and I felt like we still had more to discuss. Maybe we don't, but if you don't mind giving a quick recap of what we talked about last week, and we can go from there.
Yeah, sure. So this is a project that we're trying to get up and running to track the stale content on the website. And that is basically how we want to do that is to get a script that'll check the repo, the documentation section of the repo, and sort of check things that haven't been updated in about a year or so more. And then we'd like to roll this into each of the release cycles, so the docs lead for the release will be able to run the script to get sort of the output of what's stale, make a GitHub issue, and then sort of work with different SIGs to get that content either updated if it needs to be, or somehow removed, which will have a lot of other caveats of making sure things aren't removed without obviously making sure people aren't using it anymore and it's really no longer needed. And so I think last week we talked a lot about different ideas of things that could be implemented. And there is a link in the doc if you want more suggestions. This is sort of like, we're just putting this out there this is the first stop. So that we obviously need a lot of communication between all the different SIGs and SIG release and everything. So this is sort of the first stop to get ideas. And what I'd like to really get out of the conversation from today is some ideas around what an MVP could look like and what sort of our first steps POC could be. I had some ideas in the Google Doc, which I honestly just came up with 5 minutes before this meeting, so they're not well thought out, you could say. So they're definitely just sort of ideas of what more along the lines of what I like to get. And that's sort of within an MVP, like make sure we have a communication plan of how we're going to roll it out and get some buy-in from at least SIG release, because we'd have to take some resources from the release docs lead to work on this project with us, and then start building awareness in the SIG docs, not SIG docs because we're SIG docs, but the other SIGs to talk about that this project is coming up, and then sort of identify 1 or 2 SIGs that we could participate that would be willing to help us in a POC to sort of figure out this process is going to work. And then obviously coming up with a script is something we need for an MVP that at least checks things in the repo and whatever the criteria is based on the last commit date, or if there's other things we need to add in there. And then the goal, I think, will be getting this up and running in like a small scale POC with the identified SIGs that are willing to participate in the next release cycle, which I think is 122, but I like completely blanked on what release cycle we're actually on. So please let me know if that's a different number. So those are sort of things I had as an MVP ideas, but if you guys have any ideas, if you all have any ideas, let me know. I kind of went through that quickly. I think a lot of people were on this call last week, so I kind of went quickly through the project scope. So if anyone has any ideas.
Cool, thanks for the recap. And I definitely have ideas, but I'd like to give folks in our, any other folks a chance to speak before I mention anything.
Hey, yeah, I was taking a look at building the script and running that just locally. One thing that it looked like was that the commit date or the last commit date might not be the best criteria on its own. I can link to the script that I came up with, and I can potentially put up a draft PR for it. But the files that were being identified by this script were mostly glossary files, with the exception of, I think there were 4 additional files, including the kube control commands, like Hugo shortcodes, that sort of thing. So I don't know if it would be helpful to maybe outline additional criteria for identifying what would be the stale documents.
I think so. Thank you for doing that. That's really helpful. I haven't had a chance to actually test anything in the repo to get anything else, so I think that's really helpful feedback. I know Tim had mentioned last week about going through older GitHub issues to sort of identify things that probably should need refresh based on what the issues that haven't been touched in a while. So that could be another criteria. Did you have any ideas about what could be additional criteria? Other than the last commit date, that was sort of what I was rolling off of. But and if anyone has any other ideas for commit, whatever criteria, that's the word I was looking for.
For some files, we have reviewers, and we could look for what it's a bit hard to work out from the API, but we could look at when any of those reviewers last reviewed a PR on that file, which is probably going to be for a lot of things, 2015 or something, a long time ago. But it does give you a clue.
I know that we talked a little bit about potentially leveraging things like front matter, and the whole issue with that is it doesn't exist today. So like getting to the state where we do have that data to leverage, I almost wonder if it's possible to narrow down the scope for what we're scripting against. So like, all right, if it's a glossary, maybe that gets shelved or ignored in the script, or if it's, we've ran into a few pages that are older, maybe less critical, and we find out those sub areas or subfolders that are more critical to, remain fresh, if you will. But I'm almost wondering if long-term it makes sense to start including a full page review date in the front matter as some of our prerequisite of merging a PR. I think it's a little bit of busy work, in my own opinion, just because if you're putting extra burden or extra work on the contributors. But if we did have front matter of the last time the page is fully reviewed, it could eliminate some of the, levers that we have to move to actually make the script work and be effective. But open for other folks' thoughts here too. Tim?
I'm going to come right back and say, we can prioritize based on analytics and say stuff that's in the top 20 pages that are popular, that's English, that doesn't have a review date set yet, and where one of the SIGs involved is on our list of SIGs. That's probably only 3 pages. That's an MVP, I think.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Keeping cut to a very small MVP to kind of prove that what we're doing makes sense, and then also like get a little victory happening so we can all like feel good, because this is definitely a very massive project and has the potential to be very exponentially big. So that's why I want to try to get something small. So I think that's a really good idea to sort of use the analytics as like an initial pass. And my other comment with adding the reviewers front matter, I think there's a lot of other kind of busy work pieces to this anyway. Like to do this, we'd have to identify all the SIG owners to add it to the front matter anyway. So I'm not sure how much additional busy work it would be, since we're already kind of doing that anyway for a lot of the files.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And to the first point about this overall kind of, this can be a big monster monster of a burden to take on, and I would hate to see this get bogged down in politics and opinions, and really, I'd hate to see this lose momentum based on, you know, more or less bike shedding on it. And I would lean, or you know, I guess I'd be more apt to see any sort of progress in the sense of, you know, we could open an issue with what actions we plan on taking. We can send out more communications to the wider Kubernetes dev. At least from our discussions here, it seems like everyone generally agrees that stale content is an issue. It has been an issue. I don't think we're going to have that silver bullet right out of the gate, but I do think we shouldn't let that hinder any progress that we can make. And I appreciate, Taylor, the work you've done, you know, creating that script or the initial steps there. It'd be great to see what we can do to generate that into more of an MVP. And if there's anything I can do to help out, whether that be generating a report from analytics, whether that be we change some of the requirements for front matter for reviewers to follow when looking at PRs. I mean, things like adding a date of when a page is updated in front matter, it almost doesn't harm anything at all to begin with. If we were to say, okay, reviewers is required to add a date in the front matter of when the page is fully reviewed, yeah, it's a little bit of busy work, but we're not going to change the site's content. There's not really much to push back on other than the act of enabling it. So I would be completely for seeing folks encourage that type of behavior, and maybe at some point it becomes more of a formal requirement than a, hey, nice to have, nudge, nudge approach. And sorry, Tim, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were suggesting we should have have it outright, because that would block a bunch of PRs.
Yeah, I don't think blocking's going to be the best way to win people over with this, but I do think that we could begin asking and formalizing what it looks like to include that front matter in a page. Kind of like how we deal with squashing PRs right now. For those that don't know, we request folks who are reviewing a PR to squash it before we merge it. In the event that they're unable to, timing is of the essence, or just pure PR velocity, sometimes we'll apply a label that will squash the PR automatically before merging it. We like to have the folks who create the PR do the squashing. It's a good skill to have. It's a good skill to know. At the same time, we're balancing that line of folks who might not be a traditional developer who want to merge in their code changes or their docs changes as code. And we don't want to be the blocking process because they can't merge or can't squash a PR. And so maybe not the perfect example, but that's an example of where it's kind of up to the user or the approver's judgment when reviewing the PR of what goes through and what doesn't. You know, is it really quick to add that front matter? It might be worth including as part of the review criteria, and then start to formalize that with other reviewers and approvers. But initially, that still might even be putting the cart in front of the horse. I still think we just need to, you know, like I said, maybe opening up an issue of what the plan of attack is, maybe sending out the communication emails. Like I said, we're not going to ever hurt ourselves by over communicating this change. And as we've seen just internally with SIG docs, there's a lot of discussion to be had around this topic for sure. Cool. Any other thoughts around the stale content initiative? Is that a half question?
It's me again. I'm gonna take the floor for a moment. Yeah, I reckon we could use some lightweight tooling, the kind of thing to say, if you're going to set a reviewer front matter, it either has to not be there or it has to look like this format, and that will be a failure. So if it's there, it's valid. That kind of lightweight thing. I'm interested in what people on the call feel about that. Does that seem like useful, or is it too early for that kind of checking?
I'm for the idea. I think it might be a little early, but there's nothing stopping us from starting getting those pieces in motion. especially if we're talking about more of a default approve and fail on an incorrect format or date that's approved or an incorrect format. But like I said, I really think communication, opening up issues with plans of attacks is really going to be the next steps here. If we have a PR in flight to start enforcing things like this, just saving some work down the road, in my opinion. And I guess, Abby, do you have everything you need or feel comfortable moving forward with this, at least with the information we've gathered the past couple of weeks? I know we're going to have our quarterly review, but do you have enough to at least begin working, or is there anything we can help clarify?
Yeah, I think I have a lot of good ideas based on the conversations we've had of what to look like. I want to try to get a real formalize as much as possible sort of MVP, and then maybe move it into an issue if that's the best place for it in the repo, and open it up and sort of at least have it there so we can kind of point people to it. So if that sounds great to everyone here, that's probably my next step, is sort of formalize things into an issue so we can kind of raise awareness. I do have a question about how analytics is run. Is that something that you have to hand out? Like, it's not available to everyone, right? You just run the reports.
Yeah, so as far as I know, anyone can view the analytics. I'm happy to give whatever access that we give by default. We try to make it public, but there's issues with making Google Analytics data public based on how you can't basically click a button saying view all my analytics for whatever reason. And so that was the issue there. But if anyone requests access to our analytics, we give them access. Contributors have open access. There's really no confidential data in there other than the page reports. So I'm happy to give you access. As far as generating reports and PDFs and things of that nature, I believe it has to be an administrator. I don't think anyone can go in and generate those reports automatically. I do have a action item on my bucket list to generate some of the localization reports. So I do plan on doing some tooling and automation there anyway. So happy to help out where I can. And that's a very long-winded answer of saying you should be able to view them, but if not, I'm happy to help.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem.
And thank you to everyone for the feedback and to sort of having really great thoughts on this. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for running this. Cool. All right. Moving on. The last piece of discussion we have here is our quarterly review. In this case, we normally will do a review of a single quarter, and we'll start planning for the next quarter. Between the holidays, the winter holidays, and the new year, we kind of didn't get right on the Q4 review, Q1 planning. So with Q2 right around the corner, what we're going to do is hold a Q4 review, and then we're going to kind of squish quarter one and quarter two in one quarter. We're going to plan for the remainder of Q1 and trickle into Q2 there. So I apologize for the alphabet soup of the invite that says Q1/Q2 whatever review meeting, but that's how we got here. And what we're going to do on a February the 18th, which is 5 p.m. Pacific, we're going to review quarter four and then talk about what we're going to do with the remainder of Q1 and Q2. I encourage folks that have anything they want to bring up for discussion to please click on the agenda doc. It is different than our weekly agenda doc. I have it in our weekly agenda doc, a link to the quarterly planning meeting. I encourage folks to go there, look, see if there's anything that they were accountable for, anything that interests them. Quarterly planning not only is a great time to reflect on what has happened and some of the work that's in the pipelines, but also if you're interested in helping out with any of the initiatives, can always use more bodies, more ideas, more opinions, and help deliver on some of these objectives. So if you've been really chomping at the bit to accomplish something a little bit wider than some of the PRs that we see in flight in SIG docs, or if you want to jump on an existing project, that's going to be a great time to really talk about that. So that's really all I had. Is there any questions about the quarterly planning, why we do it, what's going on? I know we have some new folks in the call here. Happy to clarify. We do have some time. Cool. Not hearing a ton of feedback. Not a bad thing. Hopefully I'll see a lot of y'all at the quarterly planning. I know it can be late or really early depending on where you're at in the world. Try to make sure it suits everyone's time for sure. And that's all I had for the agenda. Does anyone have anything else that they would like to discuss today? All right. Well, that's a SIG meeting. Thanks for joining, y'all. Talk to you later.
Cool. Thank you.